Welcome to Theory into Practice. Today, our interview, I've actually been looking forward to this interview for a long time as a colleague, a student at one point, a colleague, and now a friend. And I'm very excited to bring to this episode Mr. Tim Padilla.
Thank you. I am very excited to be here, and it has been a long time coming, and I'm so thankful that we could finally get it on our schedules together.
Yeah, me too, with what you do. And we're going to get really in detail about what you've been doing over the last few years, but also what you were doing even before that. But just, I know you've been busy, and with everything you got going on, I appreciate you making the time to not only come talk to me, but also the listeners out there.
Absolutely.
So, Tim, what we do a quick, do everybody a quick solid, just tell everybody who you are and what you've been doing.
Yeah, so my name is Tim Padilla. It's Spanish. Mi nombre es Timoteo Juan Chavez Padilla, to be exact. Great grandpa was the cook for the King of Spain. That's like my only claim to fame, really. And that and Grandpa Padilla teaching me how to play music by ear, which we can talk about in a minute. But it's been a pleasure. I work in the private sector of emergency management and have been, as you said, a student learning the process of emergency management, and now have become a semi-professional in my field and trade.
Very specific area too. Well, I want to talk about because you don't hear a lot of individuals that come from where you came from to be an emergency manager. But I want to talk about, you were an actor, you're an entertainer, you're a musician. Let's talk about that. You know, you were very well, and you like entertaining. I know that you loved acting, being that part. So let's talk about how you go from being an actor and an entertainer. And I know you still play music, so it's not past, but your acting may be. Let's talk about how you go from being an actor to emergency management.
Yeah, with everyone that I've found in the walk of emergency management, there's always a very cool background story of how they got in there. It's very rare that you just go out of high school into college and you want to be an emergency manager. That just isn't normal. There's usually a different path that everyone has taken to fall into it. And mine is quite unique. And in the areas that I've specialized in, it makes sense how I got there. But years and years ago, I had a crush on a girl in second grade, and she played an accordion. And so I basically got 6 free lessons and tried to impress her by playing the accordion. Years later, I ended up doing competitions, and in 1998 won the North American Championship for accordionists. And I had seen her that same year. We were both 19, I think, at the time. And she was introducing me to her boyfriend then, and I introduced her to my then girlfriend. And long story short, she is long gone, and I am still stuck playing the thing. But it ended up opening up a huge career portal for me to break into the business a little bit. And I ended up I was known as Little Timmy on the Mark and Brian KLOS 95.5 out in LA. It was a rock station. And I used to do bumper music when I was a kid for fun. They would have me come on the show playing the accordion for entertainers like Tony Bennett or Slash from Guns N' Roses. In fact, Slash and I played 3.5 minutes live, knocking on heaven's door, me on the accordion, and he played a jamming guitar solo over it. So that was a fun experience. I actually ended up playing with Chicago live on stage that same year at the Palladium. They didn't have an accordion player, and if you listen to their Christmas album, you'll hear a Celtic accordion player in the Little Drummer Boy song. And they wanted that part back in their band, so they invited me. They said, "Hey, what are you doing on Friday?" I said, "I don't know, nothing." So they said, "Come to the Palladium and play with us." So I got to join Chicago live on stage playing the accordion, which was really cool. From that, the fans that listened into the show, someone sent a search for the hottest accordionist in America competition, and that led me to Branson, Missouri for the Lawrence Welk Show, which has been on TV for 50 years. A lot of the stars are much older now, so they're not touring as much. But at that time that I had joined, they were still doing legs of tours through a great company, Rocklands Entertainment, up in Canada, actually. Brian Edwards is the one who promotes that. Really good guy, does a lot of different tours. So we did Canada coast to coast 5 times, and I've seen 38 of the United States based on that trip. From the accordion, it opened up more doors. I ended up doing entertainment supervising at the Universal Studios Hollywood theme park, did a lot there. And I bounced back and forth looking for gigs, looking for TV gigs. I've been featured cameos on little bit roles on Saved by the Bell, The New Class, and Mad Men series, and some different things. You'll see little cameos of me running around in backgrounds and such. Did tons of commercials. But yeah, I ended up doing some volunteering in a CERT program that was at NBC Universal. They've had a program for more than 30 years now, and it's a really well-established oiled machine that they have. And so I started taking my first classes as a volunteer, and that led to about 4 or 5 years in, a coordinator position opened up on the property. And the gentleman who was running the entire organization at the time was Mike Ripley. And he's known in these, got a lot, I think he's now with Southern California Edison, but he's worked for Disney, he's worked for Universal, he's been all over the map. And he was really instrumental in bridging me into the profession of emergency management, and said, he said, Timmy, I know that emergency management isn't as exciting as what you're probably used to as an actor and entertainer, but I think you'd be really good. There's a passion there. And what really led me to saying yes to that position was in 2015, my dad passed away. And that's a huge game changer and life changer for anyone when you lose that person that's been your mentor all those years, the person that's been pushing your career and really driving you forward. And they have all the answers when you need something, right? You ask them the questions. So that really changed my life and my outlook on life, to the fact that I really wanted to do something that was a little bit more meaningful. And I was tired of chasing the career and I wasn't sure where it was going. So there's a lot of life balance that I wanted to orchestrate into my profession and my career. So that's how I got into my first stepping stone in emergency management itself. And from there, because I have such a strong entertainment background, a lot of my presentations within trainings and doing the monthly cert drills and everything, it became a lot of fun. It was a canvas for me to paint upon and use those skills that I developed as an actor and an entertainer in presentations, taking something that, let's be honest, emergency management is not the most rocket science fun topic to be shared out there right now, but we make it cool, right? We do what we can to really make it fun. And I think that's one of the skills that I have that I can lend to the profession, if you would, is just really trying to showcase the value in what you do, and then also bridge this whole entertainment aspect to the career. And a lot of my background has been in the studio area, because I've been on both sides of the camera, in the front and behind, producing and all that fun stuff. I know all of the positions, so it's a very comfortable area for me to be in. And so my career has taken me from NBC Universal, and then I've recently been a senior manager over at Paramount Pictures. Who knows where I'll be next, but it's always a fun experience.
Yeah, and it's just a little bit of one of those things that you look at and you're like, it's got to be a little glamorous. To be on the back lots and to be working at NBC Universal and then Paramount. But I want to talk about, you took on you became passionate about emergency management. You took on the role and actually started to do what's needed to actually be a great emergency manager. And having worked with you personally, I know that you're very passionate about it. You built a very strong CERT program through, especially with NBC Universal, but with the amount of time you put into not only conducting the drills and the training, but also getting people to take part in that. So let's talk about your road to becoming the emergency manager that you are today. Because yeah, I know it, but let's just tell everybody else, as far as going to the basic academy, about taking classes, going back to school, but also you've carved out a really niche and expertise in the entertainment industry that is ultimately missing throughout, if you go wider than where you've been. But you spent the better part of a decade, if not more, working in the entertainment industry in emergency and applying emergency management, both as a trainer and a coordinator. So let's talk about your journey there.
Yeah, it has been a journey, to put it in short terms. What I've found is what really drove me as an individual into the passion side of it is the passion and that you get from everybody else working in a team function. And as a volunteer, I wasn't paid initially to do what I do now for a salary. It was really that camaraderie, that you're all doing something for the greater good of human life. And the skills that I've picked up and acquired, it didn't happen overnight. They always say, oh, you're a 14-year overnight success. That's what it's like. And it's true. There's so much. Emergency management has been one of those areas that I still am blown away that when you do a career, you think at some point you're going to be an expert at something, right? You're getting your skills and eventually you're going to be the best engineer, or you're going to be the best at whatever you're doing. And in emergency management, I have found you literally cannot be a full-on expert in your world, because there are so so many facets to emergency management, business resilience. There's so much that you have a little piece in everybody's business. I didn't go to school to be a carpenter. I didn't go to school to be an engineer or a plumber or a firefighter or any of these other trades that are all little buttons and areas that emergency management touches. So I had to take a different path and find a way of leaning on those areas that are not so familiar with the expertise of those that have done that. And so that's been my bridge, if you would, into emergency management and the profession itself. I did start going to classes because my degree was in theater arts. So I did transfer recently my arts degree into a science degree. Had to take biology and statistics to do that, so that was fun. But there's value, a significant value in both the volunteer programs, the train the trainer programs that are out there. The CERT program is a great one, but also in the value of FEMA and all the ICS courses that they have available to anyone. And it's already paid for. We've already invested the money into these formats. So it's free. You can go online, sign up for a free account, get your student ID, and just start taking classes and courses. And it was really instrumental in the development of my career to get that framework, that cornerstone, if you would, background knowledge in the industry. The FEMA Basic Academy is, I think, where we met actually for the first time out in Pasadena. And that was such a blessing because it opens up so many doors to the networking environment as well. I was in the same class as some of the city workers, EMs, future EMs that weren't even in the position yet that are now working EMs, which is fantastic. Emergency managers, if those that are listening don't know what an EM is. But I was promised one thing when I started, it just reminded me, one thing that I was promised going into emergency management was that I will learn a ton of acronyms. And even if I thought I knew all the acronyms, there's actually acronyms for the acronyms that you know as an acronym. So that was fun to get started on. But all of the collegiate, there's value in it. And my major now was organizational leadership. And it's a unique one. It's not what you would normally pair with the thought process of going into emergency management. A lot of people just major in emergency management or in homeland security or something like that, where I took a different type of approach because I've always been around that private sector executive tier. So I really wanted to learn a little bit more about getting in the headspace of the executive tier and understanding how the buy-in works and how all the process is. So my specialization is in emergency management, but my major is actually in organizational leadership.
No, I think that's important too. And when I've actually talked about this before many times as it relates to education evolving around emergency management and having degrees based on emergency management, the different names that they have. But I feel like you could take so many of the different degrees that are out there and apply them to emergency management that would actually amplify doing the job as an emergency manager. And leadership and organizational development is definitely one of them. I have a degree in leadership and organizational studies, and I definitely applied that to emergency management. Since when I'm going through my work as well, a lot of my work on that was around emergency management and how to lead in the industry. But working on my bachelor's, my master's, and now my doctorate, it's all around the same thing, different topics, different major. But how do I apply it to what it is that I do right now? But ultimately, what it is growing people, and I've seen you've done that quite a bit, very well, built a great reputation for yourself, in not only in the industry, but just with those that practice it as practitioners myself. One of the things I'd like to talk about is what was it about specifically emergency management that really just was like the igniter to say, this is where I want to go and I want to get better
Yeah, so I think the number one driver for wanting to excel and get better at your craft, especially in emergency management, is the fact that you are dealing with something that is life threatening, right? It is a person's life at hands, and what you teach has to be correct because you're basically setting someone up for either failure or success based on what you're giving them on information. So I wanted to make sure that I was covering all of my, dotting my I's and crossing those T's to make sure that what I was teaching was also sound best practice knowledge. And some of the areas that I have found my way into throughout the industry is the networking areas, especially with great organizations. That's really where I think a lot of that drive continues to be ignited from. Great organizations like the Business and Industry Council of Emergency Planning and Preparedness, BICEP. It's been in Los Angeles for a little over 40 years now, started by the mayor, Tom Bradley, back in the day. And it was known that if there was a significant emergency in California, that the fire department's going to be tapped out. There's not going to be enough resources. And that's really how CERT got its origin and how it all started. But the members of the organization are all, it's a nonprofit, and everybody's there because they care about making the world a little better place. And I have met so many great people through organizations like that, where you can meet the J. Paul Getty Trust Museum emergency preparedness person. You can meet someone from Deloitte. You can meet someone from a private small business that does canned water, or like an SOS survival products company. There's so many different people from different walks, different professions. It's just great. And then also connecting in to the public sector, where you also have that mutual private sector and public sector. I find sometimes there's a disconnect, and to have an organization that brings that together is fantastic. And then on a bigger level, you have organizations out there like the International Association of Emergency Managers, which is another one that I've actually been recently introduced to. And because I was finishing up my student membership, I was able to get started with them as a student, which I think was a great approach, because the organization actually asked me a bunch of questions from insight, from fresh perspectives, gaining that fresh perspective. And I think there's a lot of value in that, where you get the experienced personnel involved to help with the wisdom, but you also have that fresh perspective coming in. And I think that's sound advice for any emergency that you would be dealing with. You want to have that blend, that perfect sync of inclusivity within the group, so that you're all functioning together as one team.
Yeah, for emergency managers, for me, one of my favorite things is the networking that comes to place with that. Emergency managers overall are some of the most friendly and willing to collaborate out of any industry. They want to help, and they want to be a part of the process, and they want to be able to contribute to your success in many ways. Of course, you always have your one-offs that they're like, I don't want to work with anybody, but overall collaboration and networking and partnership is one of the core foundations of emergency management and what we do, because we're such a support and coordination driven profession, but also individuals that do the job are all about how do I support the systems and the processes that are taking place to do the job that we want to do, which is ultimately protection of life, property, and the environment, which, as you mentioned, everything we do or don't do can greatly contribute to someone's lives or livelihood, losing their home, a loved one. It's just, there's so much there that you got to think about when we're doing the things we're doing. And you're talking about too, you got a whole career ahead of you still. What is it that you want to see as an emergency manager as you continue to develop your skills and develop your expertise in the field?
Yeah, I think just woodshedding, that there's a lot to be said about volunteering and then getting that lucky break to get into the industry, and then catapulting from that. But really, I think it goes back to taking initiative and actually taking that action step. I think that's really something that's important for myself to continue doing as I self-assess and look at what could be my strengths and weaknesses, and how do I get stronger in certain areas. But I think don't be afraid to embrace what you don't know, because everybody didn't know something at some point, and we only learn by embracing it and getting smarter, and working harder at what you do, right? So that you can work smarter and not harder. But I think that's, for me, where I'm leaning towards, is exploring the areas that I might not know. For instance, I work with a lot of nonprofits, but I didn't really have any experience in writing grants. That's something I've decided next year. I think I'm going to spend some time learning about that, because I don't know anything about it. And so I think if you put yourself as a kid again, and remember what it was like to be excited about something when you were first going, and we just came off of Halloween, right? So maybe trick or treating, or you putting that costume on and you were going out and having a good time. That excitement that you had when you were little doing something, I think we still have that inside us as adults. We just have compartmentalized it over the years. And so it's important to bring that back out, I think. And I think taking action and taking initiative is the secret sauce between catapulting, wanting a career, and actually having one that's flourishing. And just, again, goes back to networking and keeping your friends. Don't forget to check in with them. There was a time where I felt like sometimes I was the only one reciprocating those texts out. Hey, how are you doing? Checking in. And then there comes a point where you get busy, and that doesn't happen anymore. But I think it is important to bring that Rolodex up every once in a while, and keep those connections in, because you never know where you're going to be, and what you might learn from someone. And I think that's important.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you on that. I think we need to increase the level of engagement and participation in the things that we do. That level of engagement that takes place, I feel, is lacking tremendously. But one other, in my mind, I think there needs to be more around contribution. There needs to be, yeah, it's great to participate, but are you actually actively engaging and contributing to what it is that you're doing, whether that's the growth of yourself, the growth of someone else, the growth of the profession. Learning, active learning is a big part of that. But let's go back to what something you mentioned earlier about being involved in, so bicep, and talk about your level of volunteering, the volunteering that you did there or do there, and how other emergency managers can look for little areas like that or big areas like that where they could engage and contribute to nonprofit organization by adding value with their expertise.
Yeah, so with that organization specifically, I started as a member. I actually was awarded a Rising Star Award back in 2019, and that's how I heard of the organization. And they offered me a membership for the year, and so I took them up on it. And as I was getting involved, I started realizing all these people are there because they care to bring resilience to the community that they're serving. And there was some holes within the marketing side of it and a few areas that I had some expertise in. And I thought maybe I can help in those areas. So I started volunteering in those areas and ended up winning out a board position. So now I actually am a sitting board member of the organization, which is a great honor to be a part of such a great legacy. And I think that the value that I find within being able to be even more to be used in a different way, in a different capacity within the industry, I think that it's really important that we don't forget to give back to the community that you expect so much from, because it's really what's going to make everybody more resilient when that emergency does happen. You're going to know the person that you're needing that help from on a personal level rather than hoping that you can get through on 911, which is not going to happen most likely, right? So it's just a great way to be able to connect with people so that you have a Rolodex within your wheelhouse that you can call in an emergency. You have those right tools in place. And that brings a lot of value to you as a person, especially if you're an emergency manager or a business resilience liaison or doing business continuity. Any of those assets of the emergency management tier, it's very valuable, and it's an asset you have to have, is that connected Rolodex friendship level.
Yeah, I think for me, it's a level, and I encourage a lot, especially with mentoring and people being involved, more than that engagement, but that contributing to the future of someone else as a mentor. I think even if it's not, you're not actively out to mentor them, they're learning something, or that you are making an investment in them. So
Yeah,
when it comes around that you have that ability to know what's going on, they know what's going on, you have a relationship built together. You definitely don't want to be meeting somebody, and we teach this, right? You don't want to be meeting somebody for the first time on the midst of an emergency situation, disaster situation, on scene. You want to have known those, build those relationships, know what each other is capable of, know the resources that are available, know where there may be shortfalls so you can try and fill them in other places. So having that contribution, it's investment. I mean, it really is an investment in someone else that can really come back to you and give you great returns on that investment as well. And I think being able to volunteer and give that time and contribute back to give back is very underutilized in our field. And I think we could definitely grow that. ISA specifically in LA, but there's people volunteer for Red Cross and then Salvation Army and all these other places that they could really add value and contribute to their organization, their jurisdiction, their little connective network. And I think we could definitely be doing a lot more of that. What would you recommend people start? Where would you recommend they start to, just if they just need to take that first step?
just be a member, and taking that, again, going back to the initiative and taking that first action step. The money's going to go to a good cause, right? It's not, there's so many nominal memberships that won't put you out or get you too far in debt or anything from doing it. But I think taking that first step and just trying it out and seeing what the organization's like, whichever one it is, just go. Out here in Pasadena, we have the Rose Parade every year, and the Red Cross is one of the great organizations that comes out and sets up their tents, and you can just volunteer for an hour or two and watch this great parade and be there in case someone gets a scraped knee or something, and you can ice them up and help them out. But I think just getting involved is a big one. And something that you mentioned that I also wanted to draw a little bit of attention to is when you talk about giving back, it's also not just the organizations, but it's also what you can give back as a person as you grow and have the wisdom and the knowledge. It's giving it back to that next generation. I had a great experience this last summer with Paramount. We had a couple of our interns that were there for the year, and I got to work with both of them over the summer. And I was so happy that they took it. They actually were interested in emergency management. So I thought, this is great. You know what? I wish I would have had somebody show me this at your age, because I did it a little later in life. So it would be great to get set up for success. So I actually had them go through the ICS 100 and 200 just to give them a broad range of kind of idea of what it's like. And they took the initiative. I said, once you're done with that, at some point, if you're still interested, you might want to do like an ICS 700 and 800 and go from there, because I knew those are the building blocks. They're always the prerequisites. It's things that you want to have in your bag that you're ready to share later. But I set them up with just those first two, and by golly, by the end of summer, they had already done those two other courses and then some. So I was very excited. And now both of those interns, one of them works for a fire station now. The other intern just got hired as a coordinator out in a different state, but he just got hired as a coordinator role. So that is just fantastic that they went from, but that's what it's about. It's just giving that next generation a stepping stone to get excited about getting in.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because there's been, I can't even count how many times that I've having the opportunity to really tell somebody or teach somebody the just a little bit about emergency management, what it is. And it's like that. I'll give you that first one for free. And then they're going to come back. It's like an
Yeah.
addiction. It really is. I can't tell you how many police officers and firefighters and military individuals that I've introduced to emergency management who have done, I want to do more of this, because it is really an interesting profession. And it really is such a collaborative networking opportunity because you work with everybody. So once they
Yeah.
get a handle on it and they actually really take a second to understand it, they fall in love with it just as much as I did when I started doing it. And it does become an addiction to think, I want to do a little bit more. I want to volunteer. I want to take a class. I want to train. I want to, if there's a part-time, I want to take a full-time job. I want to intern. That's amazing. I love that you use that example, because it really is, it is an interesting profession. Once you get to it, there's a lot there. It may not be the most exciting all the time, but it's very interesting and you're not ever really bored unless you're doing it wrong. I appreciate that very much, that sentiment of internships, because I value that very much.
And let's not forget, I was a coordinator, a senior training coordinator role when we first met, and it was because I took a mentorship with you, and you helped mentor me into that next step, and gave me the confidence to say, maybe I can be an EM, maybe I don't have to stay as a coordinator and keep supporting after 7 years. And so there's a lot of value to catapult someone's career just by giving them some confidence in what they do.
And that's a big part of it too, is just making them understand. And I was so glad to have that opportunity, but it was just making them understand that the level that's there is just a really desire. If you got the willingness, you could do the thing. And a lot of people, they don't have that, necessarily have that belief. And I appreciate that acknowledgement, but it was all you, my friend. All the work that you've done leading up to where you are now, and I love going to see where you're going to go. It's definitely a reflection on the amount of work, time, passion, and a continual work ethic that takes place to really be great at what it is you're doing. And ultimately, I just want to acknowledge you, appreciate you, what you're doing, how you're doing it, what you're doing it for, your reasons behind it. But more than that, just like for instance, being on this podcast, I tell people your time is your most valuable asset. And I appreciate you taking the time to give me today.
No, yeah, thank you. There's so much that a person can deliver in that we don't even know what we don't know until we get into the experience. For instance, COVID, right? That was a great example of uncharted territory for many of us. And working at a television studio, it was a very unique opportunity to figure out how are we going to be able to handle all these props, all these actors that have to stay and stand close and everything. We had to develop an entire new industry for taping TV shows. And I was blessed to work with the Superstore, season 6. I even got a Letterman jacket. I wear it. I should have wore it today. I wear it proudly every day. It's one of my favorite things that I was gifted from that group. And they volunteered a couple weeks with our team as an emergency services group. They volunteered a couple weeks with us to figure this out because it was uncharted territory. And if I'm not mistaken, that was one of the first shows. I don't know that they were the first show back on the air in COVID, but they were definitely the first functioning taping series that was just a couple weeks, 3 weeks into the COVID experience, that we were already kicking around this concept of how are we going to do this. And all the executives from all the different studios came, and we had the stars on the ground 6 feet apart. We told them, you're going to do this 3 times. You're going to see it all. We worked it out with the prop guys the actor touches one part of the cup, the prop person touches the other, and they never stop touching those same 2 spots. We worked it all out. The director was phenomenal. He actually did Superstore, but he also did Blacklist, which is completely different markets. One's a comedy, one's a fight scene, and he was still trying to figure out. We were talking, and he said, I still don't know how I'm going to do these fight scenes yet, but it was such a great experience. And that's the resilience within bringing that team camaraderie and having that humble leadership where you're just there to help support whatever you can do. And everybody, it doesn't matter what position you're in, everybody has that opportunity. Because again, I was just a coordinator at that point. There was an EM above me and a director above him, and they were the ones with the expertise, but we all worked together to make that experience happen. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's a perfect place to actually wrap up. You got someplace to be, I got someplace to be, but one of the things I want to make sure that we tap on is that the level of creativity that takes place in emergency management. COVID was something that we had never really been faced with before in modern history, right? And we had to be very creative in how we did things in order to keep business running as usual, or as usual as possible. And to be that, and we have to be creative thinkers. We have to be critical thinkers, strategic thinkers in what we do as emergency managers. And having that ability to do it at the level that you did it, in the area that you did it, that's an amazing experience that you now can teach others and share others. And but it boils back down to that level of support, coordination, and willingness to contribute and be a part of that bigger picture. Which now that you have had that experience that none of us wanted to go through, but when we actually experienced it and had to come up with these new solutions, be creative in how we did things, keeping people safe, and apply our skills and knowledge into expanding other people's realm of knowledge, it's definitely worth the time that it takes to do our job. It takes a lot of time to learn to do that, to be able to say in that kind of a situation, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. And I'm going to help you do it. And I'm going to teach you to do it. And it's the ability that want to really work with other people, coordinate and support them, that really makes other people successful. And I've definitely seen that from you over the last almost 10 years now that we've known each other.
Yeah.
And through your not only evolution, how you've evolved as a emergency manager, but the expertise and your speciality in how you do work with other people.
Yeah, thank you for that. And it's just a testament to the friendships, the relationships, and I just want to say thank you to everybody. If I sat here and named them, we would have another hour on the show at least. But I want to say thank you to everybody that's ever given me that opportunity to shine. It's because of that resilience. My immediate managers, all the way through to just my peers and volunteers. I really appreciate everybody. It's doing great things with great people in great places. That's what it's all about. And we do the greatest good for the greatest number, and try to do no harm, right? Those are the mottos we use. So thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for this time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for the time. I definitely appreciate you making the time for me. I know you're very busy, and ultimately, for those who are out there listening, I'll put all the contact information for, not all of it, but to be able to LinkedIn contact for Tim, so you could connect with him online. He's very active on there. He's very receptive to meeting new people. But Tim, is there any last words you'd like to share with our listeners for how they may be able to contact you or to contribute to you as an individual?
Yeah, so LinkedIn's probably the best. It's my industry preferred for connecting. So linkedin.com/in/Tim Padilla, just like it sounds. You'll see me on there. But feel free to drop me a little note, say hello, say, hey, I saw you on the podcast or something, so I know where I'm meeting you from. I really do, believe it or not, know every single person on my LinkedIn and how I know them. It's actually something I'm proud of. So please keep that going by helping me out, get a starting point. But no, again, thank you so much for the time. We'll do this again sometime.
I hope so. I truly enjoyed it. I always like hearing about your background. It's always been interesting to me that you've come from being an actor to now emergency manager, but the journey you've taken along the way has been great. For all those who are out there listening, driving down the road, I will make sure I put his LinkedIn link in the show description, so they'll be there when you finish. When you're actually in a safe place, you can click on that, connect with Tim. He's definitely someone you want to know, and he's definitely someone you're going to watch his career over the next 10, 20, 30 years as he continues to not only improve as an individual, but improve upon the profession. Tim, thank you again for taking the time. As I mentioned, your time is very valuable to me, but it's your most valuable asset. And the fact that you gave me some today is truly amazing. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
So everybody out there, stay safe. My name is Daniel Scott. My goal here is ultimately for us to get better, and let's do it together.